Hello, everybody. Today is March 4th, and we're doing government and social. Was it social? I saw. Okay. Great. All right. Anyway, my brain's a little fried this week. It's a little mushed up and mashed. And
You did a great job retaining that information for 10 seconds.
for 10 seconds, but my mind's filled with a lot of things right now, and they're all conflicting with each other.
Microplastics.
Yeah, probably microplastics, too.
Gonna have to eat more fruit.
Well, here is a man who we often point to as one of the small points of light in an otherwise black blanket of government. And he has some questions for our digital overlords.
The Verge has the headline, Ron Wyden asks for rules about whether you own your digital purchases. To put it simply, prior to agreeing to any transactions, consumers should understand what they're paying for and what is guaranteeing after the sale. Because too much of it is right now is you give us your money and we'll think about it.
Is it even really rules so much as disclosure? That's kind of what it sounds like. He just wants there to be a disclosure that you don't actually own it.
He's not saying you shouldn't be able to buy a license. He's just saying that it should be labeled as such. And they should warn you that, hey, on a whim, we could pull this away from you.
It's almost like when you buy a house. It's like, hey, I'm buying this house. It's like, no, you're licensing this house. And
From the bank. The bank owns the house.
And for four hours later, the bank is like, oh, we got a better deal. You have to get out now. That is kind of how it is when you buy digital goods.
It's also how it is when you put your money in a bank.
Yeah.
You become an unsecured creditor. And the FBI is out there solving crimes, and they use some very advanced tactics to do so. And maybe a little too advanced sometimes, but the good news is there are rules about exactly what they can look at. The bad news is they wipe their asses with those rules.
To identify suspects in Idaho killings, the FBI used unrestricted consumer DNA data.
Restricted consumer data.
This is one of the bingo squares on the level one, the law enforcement using data that they promised they wouldn't use for law enforcement. It turns out if it's in a database, it's going to be fair game. Even if there's rules, it's like, oh, no.
Those rules can't stop me because I can't read.
Yeah, this is assault on all sides. See also the Apple thing. It's like, oh, my encrypted cloud backups. It's like, no, law enforcement should be able to trawl that because it's just sitting there. It's just sitting there in the open, even though it's encrypted and behind a locked box. We could just search that at will and find stuff. Just like if we went door to door searching, you probably could find a lot of people that have committed crimes.
So they're allowed to search their DNA database. They're allowed to search DNA databases of companies, the recreational companies, if you've opted in or not opted out, I think is actually how it goes, right?
Yeah.
You're opted in by default, I think. But if you opt out explicitly, they are not allowed to touch that. But for some reason, they're still given access to it and just told, don't look at that. Well, in this case, which is a fairly famous case, it was a very bad thing. And their argument was like, oh, you don't understand. This was a really bad thing. We needed to do that.
There's a secondary thing here, which this article doesn't touch on, and that is the whole, we are doing DNA matching was never, ever, ever designed to be a database of millions of people. So if you have a database of everybody's DNA markers for the type of DNA matching that they do, you're going to have a lot of overlap, a significant amount of overlap. And so you could end up fingering somebody for a crime that is actually innocent.
And in fact, they did not have this fellow's DNA. They had a family tree, which they were able to build from the public databases. He never did that. Then they used that to narrow down his possible location, stole the trash from that location, which is legal. When you put your trash on a curb, it's not yours anymore, and used that to match his DNA.
Thank goodness, because I've gotten a lot of furniture off of curbs.
Fabulous.
And maybe a little bit of good news if you're super poor and you like the internet.
Supreme Court rejects ISPs again in the latest bid to kill New York's $15 broadband law. This is the Supreme Court. I like this too because the Supreme Court was like, this is contract law, basically. It's like you entered into a contract. If the state gives you this, if New York gives you this, you will do that. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. It's no more complicated than that. And the ISPs are like, ah!
One of their big arguments was, but what if other states do this? And AT&T pulled out completely.
Yeah.
AT&T was just like, nah, man.
We're not playing that game. Sorry.
But they accepted the contract. It's like
We'd rather pay the termination fees for that contract than.
Like, I think they should be punished for pulling. I think they violated the terms of the contract. They made some money for a while because the state gave them time. It's like, okay, you do this now, but at some point you have to do this other thing. They never did the other thing, but they still operated for a while before they pulled out, with the benefit of what the state was offering. Go get them.
And we, with our current upheaval and limitations on the money spigot and onshoring efforts, we are reminded over and over that many of the big tech companies are global companies. They do not consider themselves to have borders.
Microsoft urges the Trump administration to overhaul curbs on AI chip exports. The situation right now is we have a 3-tier system, and really the focus on the overhaul was on that second tier, because Microsoft was arguing, hey, our second-tier partners like Switzerland, they're just going to buy from China instead of us. We should really make it easy to work with those second-tier partners.
Oops.
So they're not really asking for easing the restrictions on China. They're just easing those restrictions might make it easier for China to get access to it through an intermediary in, say, Switzerland, which is what that was designed to prevent. But yeah, I agree. Like, if you look at what China is producing and the economic realities of it, and as powerful as the China GPUs are, this is pointless.
What Microsoft is trying to do is keep their numbers because they deal with these countries and they don't want to stop.
Yeah.
And here was, just the whole, we're now living in a fever dream thing. This was a really high point there because it's just like, first of all, why would you think this was a good thing?
Just why? Just why?
Well, I understand somebody created it for a joke, they claim. They're like, yeah, we're just having a good time. But it was then posted by the president.
This headline is full of a lot of landmines. A video shared by the president originated from somewhere you wouldn't expect. And it showed what is, I don't know. There were bearded dudes in bikinis in the video. It was just an AI fever dream. It doesn't even make any sense.
Well, so they're talking about the idea that we could rebuild this thing that we helped destroy and make it really nice. But it seemed like we were making it really nice for us.
Yeah. Never mind all the people we just, quote, displaced.
And there was golden statues of Trump.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what made him repost it?
Probably.
He got that far and he was like, oh yeah, I love this. It's something. You should go watch it. It's something.
If something had just moved like an inch to the left, we wouldn't be living in this reality.
That's probably not the right thing.
A few months ago.
And Apple has gone to the shareholders and said, hey, how do you guys feel about this DEI stuff? And the shareholders voted to keep it, but that still might be a sticking point.
TechSpot's headline is Donald Trump tells Apple to get rid of its diversity programs after stockholders backed him. He says that DEI was a hoax and that has been very bad for our country. But even Apple, after that, doubled down with their jobs program, which we got another article about in the business section.
Apple fundamentally is a business, and it turns out people who are diverse actually have money who might want to spend money on Apple products. That's probably who they're more beholden to.
They also have other goals in mind.
Apple AI tool transcribed the word racist as Trump. That was just a technical glitch. And glitch should be read with the Initech connotation.
Those words are so similar, right? Now, Apple, they
share at least one letter.
They had to do, well, that's what they focused on. They're like, oh, it has difficulty with the letter R. And many people tested it, and they're like, I'm not finding that anywhere else.
I don't think so, yeah.
So this is, as of the writing of this article, the author was not able to reproduce it. So they've already, it seems, fixed it.
We fixed the glitch.
Most likely that was a rogue employee just having a little fun. And Apple is in their big court case, and as usual, during these court cases, we get these little nuggets of truth that we would never otherwise find out about these companies.
Apple exec Phil Schiller testifies that he raised concerns over the App Store commissions on web-based sales. Oh, that headline, there's a lot to unpack in those words in the headline. The thing that he raised was, hey, I'm not really sure that it goes with the spirit of the ruling if we make our 30% commission 27%, and then let you use a credit card transaction somewhere else. You see, when Apple permits you as a developer to link to a third-party payment system, they only take 3% off. They still want 27% commission on that sale. It's not that you're no longer paying Apple at all. It's that Apple is asking you to account for those sales and give them 27% of that figure.
They also have records of the email chains, which went all the way to Cook, about how they would word the security warning that you were no longer in the Apple ecosystem. And that went through a couple of revisions. And they actually talked about it in the emails. It's like, we feel like people will they'll hit this and they'll just be like, I don't want to be bothered with that. Just let me click one button. I love that.
The undertone of all of these emails is also that you do not own your iPhone. You enjoy your iPhone at the leisure of Apple.
And the Phil was saying, hey guys, not only what you said, but he was like, hey, kind of feels like we're just charging people to use the web here. Should we?
He's the guy in the meeting who raises his hand and is like, is this a good idea? This seems wrong somehow.
Well, he was told no. That's it's not what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing it Cook's way.
He can be in our first member of our club.
No, he cannot.
No.
His crimes are too great.
I love how many people don't realize that Apple has been waging this war on general computation for many years now. And it's like, no, you must not accept the golden olive.
I think a lot of people maybe realize it. Like, if they have it explained to them, they just don't care.
Yeah, it's just like, I just want my life to be easier. Everything else is such a hellscape. Can I just have this one thing? And it's like, well, I mean, a Unix-based operating system is really tempting.
Well, another thing people don't realize is that all of their data is being sold. And maybe some people have this idea that, like, oh, the government's got all my data. That's kind of true, but they're bad at organizing it. There are much better entities out there, and there's no rules about them. They just sell it to anybody who wants it, including the government and law enforcement. But maybe people are catching on a little bit more.
California's radical idea for data privacy: actually enforce the law. So they're going after one of the app developer companies that siphons up all of your user data, because that was always illegal. And so why didn't we go after them before? I don't understand.
National Public Data, remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so turns out that they just ignored all of that, and they got caught doing it, and they have never been called on the carpet, but now maybe California's going to do that.
Wait a minute, guys. We have these laws. You mean we don't enforce them? Oops.
And another one of those head-scratching moments. Now, the armored Tesla one turned out to maybe not be absolutely that, but this, I've not seen any caveat here. This feels like it's just straight up.
Wendell, you've got some flights coming up. You feel a little nervous about this?
This is not great. Starlink poised to take over a $2.4 billion contract to overhaul air traffic control communication. The contract had already been awarded to Verizon. Now a SpaceX-led team with the FAA is reportedly recommended to go with Starlink.
I think the excuse here is this needs to happen now, and I'm going to give you the Starlinks for free. But I don't think that any of the other stuff is free, right?
Yeah.
Like dealing with them and maintaining them and installation. So they're going to make money off of it, I think.
Also, what if there's just like don't planes usually have quite a bit of redundancies and stuff? Like, what if the connection doesn't work out with SpaceX?
I don't know that this is communication
Starlink.
with the plane. I think this is communication amongst the other operations.
One of the things they cited was network reliability, and it is really insane, because I do agree that Starlink is probably more reliable at this point than the networks that Verizon and AT&T have. And that's because they've hollowed them out to the point that they're holding all of their customers hostage. They're not interested in building a highly resilient network, as AT&T was interested in doing in the, until about the 1970s.
And it may be that they've looked into that and actually determined that, but
I don't think so.
maybe.
Considering the state of their other audits, which are literally just ripping things out and then putting them back in quickly.
We'll probably never know. And moving over to Europe, we have a big stand against AI by the newspaper publishers.
UK newspapers blanket their covers and protest the loss of AI protections. The Make It Right campaign, or Make It Fair.
It says Make It Fair, but
But
it's the Make It Right
yeah.
campaign. So all the papers did it. So all the papers. Funny how they chose slightly different colors of blue. You think that's printing? Or
No, I think that's a printing problem. Like, each press probably had a slightly different configuration for the blue. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes into printing things consistently. Like, even if they're using different paper, it can change how the color looks.
They're upset that companies can slurp up one copy of the paper to learn everything that was in the paper.
Well, but also this new AI ruling kind of excludes that.
Yeah.
So you can text is still kind of fair game no matter what. So you can't steal music or images maybe, but text, they say is still like free information, which there's some argument for that. But the AI company is definitely abusing it. And Cellebrite, we know, is used for the worst things. It surveils not just criminals, but journalists, activists, anybody who questions power. And they say, oh, no, don't worry. We never do business with a government who would do that.
Cellebrite suspends Serbia as a customer after claims police used firm's tech to plant spyware. This is what, the first or second time ever that this has happened?
You mean that they've kicked them out for doing it?
Yeah.
Not that they've abused it. There must have been a small customer. And Denmark is maybe at the forefront of trying to figure out what we're going to do to save these poor wayward children.
Denmark to ban mobile phones in schools and after-school clubs because of the disturbing trend of children are just drawn into the phone and not really doing much of anything else.
Is this a Danish child wearing a NASA shirt?
Everybody loves space.
It's true.
Was he going to wear the shirt of the Danish space program?
Oh, wait.
So, yeah, they say, and no phones recommendation. Of course, I don't think they enforce this, but they say no phones at all before 13.
That doesn't seem terribly
Yeah,
unreasonable.
I'm not in hate with that.
It's like you can use a phone as soon as you can figure out UUCP and on the Commodore 64.
France, on the other hand, is going into the whole copyright cartel's wishes and saying, yes, we must control everything at the DNS level. But hey, you want to try to get around that? No, we want to stop that as well.
VPN providers consider exiting France over dangerous blocking demands. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're using a VPN that connected to another country. We still want to block it. And not only that, but we got another article about how France wants to ban end-to-end encryption, just like the UK.
So all these VPN companies have a cartel, and they're saying, hey, let's all agree. It's ExpressVPN, NordVPN, VPN Trust Initiative, and Surfshark. They said, let's all just agree, no more France. And that might come to pass. And yeah, I couldn't find a good source on this one, but this is a real thing, and this is happening. And of course, we've seen all the major Western countries float something like this, but France is dangerously close.
France is about to pass the worst surveillance law in the EU. We must stop them now. It is the worst in the EU, but it's a copy pasta of what was going on in the UK. It's basically the same thing, and they call it narco traffic. Oh, we need a backdoor into all the devices so we can spy on all the things. Is equivalent to we need a policeman in every home.
So, Tuda.com is encouraging activism. Not sure how effective we'll be from over here. Maybe if you're French.
This isn't the first time that France has been hilariously backward like this because they banned all encryption. I think it was the 90s or something like that. I remember reading a story about like old versions of Windows NT. You could set your region to be France, and it would disable all encryption in the operating system, which made recovering passwords trivially easy.
Well, France is not alone in wanting to ban things. The UK has a rich history. God, they love to ban things. They do not want their citizens having anything that could possibly be used for bad thefts or anything like that.
Electronic devices to be used for car thefts are said to be banned. If you're caught in possession with one of these, you have to be able to prove that you have a legitimate reason for having it.
Do you have a license?
You got a license for that.
Now, these are signal jammers, which is really just software-defined radio with a broadcast capability.
Yep.
And a little bit of software to get the common key fob frequencies. As far as I can understand it here, they're not intercepting because they have most cars, I don't know about Kia and Hyundai, but most cars have rolling keys. So you can't just intercept. What they're doing here is hoping that you click the button and ignore that there was no beep.
I think this also includes like Flipper Zero and also other devices that could extend your fob. So like if you have a clickless, like you just have to have the fob near the car, but you have a device to amplify the signal of the fob from like inside a residence, I think those devices are also banned under this, if I understood correctly.
Which again, you can build yourself. Is that going to be banned? Is a broadcast antenna going to be banned for software-defined radio?
Flipper Zero is just, oh my gosh, no. But it's fine.
And Google was looking to, as usual, control the ecosystem. And some other people over in Europe didn't like that.
Google loses fight on Android Auto access. This bodes ill for big tech. This seemed like Google was trying to say that they didn't want to give this app access on a technicality, but they ultimately did give this app access to the Android auto interface or APIs or something. But then Google said, oh, no, we just want to make sure the app was okay. We weren't being monopolistic, but they were still found to be monopolistic anyway.
It started in Italy, and then they took it to the EU. There was some kind of, if I understood correctly, it was like some sort of accessibility type thing, right? So if you had some kind of disability, this would help you navigate or something. And Google was like, nah, we don't know if that's safe. I think it did reproduce some of their features as well. And here's a little bit of a warning that OpenAI is definitely monitoring what you're doing. They are definitely running algorithms to make sure that nothing weird's going on.
OpenAI bans Chinese accounts for using ChatGPT to edit code for social media. So what are we doing today, ChatGPT? We are going to be writing a Python application to slurp up social media posts on Twitter and look for dissidents. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can help with that.
So they weren't just looking for code edits. They were looking for PR write-ups and stuff, all in Chinese language during Chinese business hours. And so OpenAI put all those points together and were like, no, you can't be a customer.
That's another, I mean, think about these models. Like, you get a model that's perfected and it's a closed model. Even if it's, running on your phone, eventually we get to a point where you tell the model, it's like, hey, if you have someone that is doing something that's kind of dissident-y, let us know. And then it's like, oh, I've been told not to help you do these things anymore because the AI is an intelligence that's living on your phone but is not beholden to you.
Hilariously, you know who doesn't do that? DeepSeek.
For now.
DeepSeek R2 is getting ready to drop. I'm very excited. As long as I can run it locally.
And Australia is following in the U.S.'s footsteps by going after this company.
Australia gets the memo and has banned all Kaspersky products on government systems. It's like, hey, wait a minute. Didn't the U.S. do this like 3.5 years ago?
It took them a minute.
Oops.
And last week we talked about Microsoft and several other companies who were just deep in the Israeli situation and offering services that probably led to blood. And a lot of people maybe were just finding out about that.
Microsoft workers protest sale of AI and cloud services to the Israeli military.
It wasn't much of a protest. They had some T-shirts that read out like something about the situation, and they stood up and whipped off their jackets dramatically, and a security guard gently pushed them aside. He didn't even stop his speech. It was during a town hall. They refused to comment on whether or not those people would be fired, which means they will. And Instagram, here was a terrible, terrible update. Someone pushed the wrong code. They're probably going to lose their job.
Meta admits Instagram error flooded Reels with violent and adult content, because that's definitely a thing that can happen on a platform where you accidentally push to prod on a Friday.
It feels like the filter was just turned around, right?
Yeah.
They're like, hey, instead of not print any of this stuff, print only this stuff.
Print not this. Oh, oops. Oops.
So that lasted for a little while, and people got some screenshots of some pretty horrible stuff, but they fixed it fairly quickly. And we've learned that Mark Zuckerberg hates leaks. How do we know that? It was leaked. And it continues to, everything gets leaked, and he is tired of it.
Meta is firing about 20 employees for leaking information.
I hope stuff continues to leak. Like, every time he does another round of firings, just more things leak.
He literally said, we expect there will be more firings. The firings will continue until morale improves. But ironically, financially, Meta is kind of killing it somehow. Like, their financials are up, they're spending money like a drunken sailor, and they're just making money hand over fist.
Yeah, because they're selling an addictive product. And Meta is on the same train as Elon Musk, it seems, because when you crunch the numbers, there is a little overrepresentation in the demographics.
Meta must face lawsuit claiming it prefers cheaper foreign workers. And they're probably going to lose this because IBM just lost their case about this, and that's probably going to be news next week. But good Lord.
Their percentage was way higher than the average.
Yeah.
And if you've noticed Zuckerberg wearing a little bit different clothing, maybe changing his look a little bit, it turns out that was on purpose, and they had a big plan.
Mark Zuckerberg's makeover didn't make people like him, the study shows.
No stylist on earth could do that.
He is actually more hated than Musk.
Wow, that seems impossible.
It turns out that Musk is liked or hated across the political divide. Like, you know, Republicans now love him and Democrats hate him. Everybody hates Zuckerberg.
Yeah, nobody likes Zuckerberg. Zuckerbot.
So maybe he'll try something else. I don't know. Different branded shirt. I'm sure that'll do it. And finally, it's been a while since we've had a really, really terrible challenge trend. But TikTok has got us covered.
The mini nonsense section of Monday or Tuesday. TikTokers dropping heavy objects on their feet in viral trend risk a lifetime of pain. It's like, yeah, you don't necessarily heal from every injury there, fellas. Come on.
That's something like young people think. I'm starting to notice that I hold on to bruises a lot longer than I used to.
No, that just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
And they'll just appear out of nowhere, and you're like,
where did that come from? Yeah.
Myself. So they interviewed one of these guys. It might have been this fella here, who was a very popular TikToker. And they're like, why would you do something like that? He's like, I just like being stupid, making people laugh. And also he got like 1 million views. So there's that.
At least $10 from those million views.
I think TikTok pays a lot.
Does it? Do they?
Yeah. I think TikTok is the highest payer in terms of that kind of thing.
That's more
So
fun.
you're saying we should be dropping heavy items on our feet on TikTok?
Well, like you just pointed out, I don't think we're able to bounce back like this guy.
Or
That's true.
peeing on fruit, as we'll find out later in the week.
I don't even know that she got a lot of views. I think that was just a crime of passion.
Oh, well, anyway, that was a nice little prelude to what's to come. Things just get weirder and weirder week to week.
Tomorrow we got tech, business news, and I forgot.
Security.
Yeah.
Security. Patch your shit. Bye.